Welcome back to Western University Vegan Society's YouTube channel. This video is just a recording of the speaker panel we had, and I just want to apologize that we recorded a bit off, and so Debbie Fong's speech got a little cut off, so I sincerely apologize. But it was a great panel, so thank you to everyone that showed up, and enjoy the rest of the video as well. The links to find out more about the speaker and what they do will be in the description below. So please look out for that and enjoy the video.
Now I'm moving on to the common myths that I've come across in my professional life. First, the myth is about protein quality. I know some other speakers will talk about that, so I'll be very brief on this one. The misconception about plant-sourced protein being incomplete, except for tofu and soybean, has been debunked decades ago. But academic and healthcare professionals in the nutrition field continue to promulgate this notion that plant-sourced protein is inferior to animal-based protein, and that we need to complement protein every meal. In fact, all essential amino acids originate from plants, and all plant proteins have all nine essential amino acids, although they exist in varying proportions when compared to animal proteins. So in other words, all plant proteins are complete, and the key in a healthy vegan diet is to go for variety and diversity of plant foods. The second myth is it's about vegan diet being too restrictive and being unsustainable because it requires much planning, so people won't stick to it. In reality, though, animal-based diets also require planning, no less planning than plant-based diets. Now, people eating animal flesh, organs, or secretions in a typical Western diet choose to eat animal products that usually come from only a handful of species, mostly cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, lamb. Meat eaters' consumption of fruit, vegetables, and whole grains is very limited. They usually don't go much beyond the common types like carrots, cucumber, apples, oranges, tomatoes, potatoes, rice, and so on. I've heard from patients of mine or clients of mine who have gone more towards plant-based that they were discovering more and more types of plant foods like fruit, vegetables, whole grains, or legumes that they've never heard of or had or never tried. In fact, that was my case more than 10 years ago. I wish healthcare professionals would realize that a vegan diet is in fact very liberating, not restrictive at all. It gives people the power to break away from the conventional way of eating that involves cruelty and injustice. It also gives people the motivation to explore different whole plant foods that they were never exposed to. Now, about sustainability, whether people can stick with it or not, clinical research, for example, the BROAD study in 2017 done in New Zealand, shows that patients who experienced positive health outcomes from whole food plant-based eating voluntarily chose to stay on this healthy diet even after the research was over. We know we need both why and how to make whole food plant-based eating sustainable. There are several challenges, unfortunately. First, most dietitians don't talk about whole food plant-based eating or don't know how to help people to eat a healthy plant-based diet to make them feel good. Secondly, many people have unrealistic expectations about vegan diets. For instance, before they went into whole food plant-based eating or vegan diets, they may have undiagnosed underlying health conditions that they thought that a vegan diet would cure. But vegan diets, it's not a cure-all magic. Third, some vegan nutrition information online can be confusing or downright misleading. So people trying to go vegan without proper support or guidance may not get it right. They, including healthcare professionals, sometimes blame vegan diets. But the diet itself actually works. Otherwise, all these long-time vegans would have died off. But the vegan diet is just a scapegoat in many cases. The third myth, it's about, you probably heard about that, eat at least 2 servings of fish a week for omega-3 fat. But in reality, fish don't make omega-3 fat. The origin is in ocean algae. So fish get omega-3 fat by eating ocean algae directly, or by eating the fish that have eaten ocean algae or have accumulated the omega-3 fat from their prey fish. I have still yet to hear any of colleagues of mine talk about how to get omega-3 fat when global fisheries collapse in less than 3 decades. The fourth myth, meet clients where they are so that we won't turn them off. Interestingly, how these people got to where they are, in my opinion, is the very problem that we need to address. For instance, meatification of diet, that means having increasing meat consumption in the diet, plays a key role in the significant rise in diabetes prevalence in China. Also, I argue that people don't get turned off necessarily by the information itself, rather by the way the information is delivered. I found that my clients generally take plant-based nutrition information, which is news to them, fairly well when the information is delivered to them in a caring, encouraging, and evidence-based manner. People have got to where they are probably because they didn't know that there are much healthier way of eating, including vegan diets. So let's not assume that they are not interested in going plant-based. Of course, they will show no interest if they don't even know that they can survive, let alone thrive on a vegan diet. Or if we continue to portray vegan diets as restrictive or hard to follow. So we need to lay all the options objectively on the table so that patients can make a truly informed decision. The fifth myth we probably heard of as well, everything in moderation. But we don't want bad or health degrading habits in moderation, do we? Should we want trans fat, chronic inflammation, global warming, pandemics, or food insecurity in moderation? I don't think so. This kind of halfway measure appeals to many people because we humans like to hear good news about our bad habits. So eating things everything in moderation is like meeting clients where they are, simply depriving clients or patients of the opportunity to be fully aware of the healing power of eating a healthy vegan diet. The last myth, it's about vegan bias. All dietetic dietetic students and dietitians have studied the Jurisprudence Handbook. There is a section called Conflict of Interest in the Jurisprudence Handbook. There is an example in this section discussing personal, moral, or philosophical beliefs that can interfere with professional judgment. Now, this is how it reads. Having strong views about the morality of eating meat, for example, should not interfere with giving professional advice about its nutritional value. I have mixed feelings about this example. No doubt dietetic students and dietitians should be mindful of their personal biases or our personal biases, but this example has a chilling effect in 2 ways, in my opinion. First, this example reinforces non-vegan students and dietitians' socially ingrained view that vegans have an inherent bias. Secondly, this example dampens vegan students and vegan RDs' willingness to discuss the downside of consuming meat, given the internship positions being very competitive and the dietetic profession being a very small community. On a few occasions, I managed to take a deep breath and openly raise the question. It's actually a rhetorical question, whether or not healthcare professionals who eat animals might have or might be unaware of their personal bias in favor of animal products. It's just that their bias is subtle and socially accepted. Now, briefly, the last area I want to touch on is why the dietetic profession, in my opinion, seems to be reluctant to embrace whole food plant-based eating. I sum up the reasons as systemic bias as well as professional and academic inertia. In my opinion, the dietetic curriculum evolves way too slowly. It's not keeping pace with what, in my opinion, nutrition professionals need to learn to restore social justice and to allow global populations to heal in a world where natural resources are fast dwindling. In the nutrition program I attended, the module about vegetarian diets, though being part of the basic nutrition curriculum, became a home study module. It happened in my year, the year before me, and the year after me, at least 3 years in a row. Food science or food lab was also not geared towards plant-based nutrition either. Once we get into practice, dietitians don't have much time to learn new things that are not closely related to what we are doing, unless we have a very inquisitive mind or we have a real interest in branching out. Here's a sad scene I witnessed several years ago. A heart disease patient asked a dietitian about whole food plant-based eating for his heart problem several times in a workshop, but he was ignored. The dietitian did not believe in vegan diets and finally said to the patient, it's not for everyone. You need to have healthy fat from fish. To me, it was a classic example of dietitians lacking knowledge about healthy plant-based eating, especially in relation to heart health. That was, and I believe continues to be, a knowledge gap about whole food plant-based eating in a dietetic academic program. Now imagine that dietitian went on to teach nutrition at a university. Her personal bias would influence the design and delivery of teaching material, which in turn would shape the learning received by future cohorts of nutrition students. So I think this kind of bias stays in the system. Now, those who may be sympathetic towards plant-based eating are not knowledgeable enough to talk about it. We know that we talk about what we were taught. When we are not taught certain things, we don't feel confident enough to talk about it. Now, those who feel knowledgeable enough don't want to be known as vegan or are not comfortable enough to talk about plant-based eating, let alone veganism, because they don't want to stand out. Now, this kind of unease stems from the learning or notions about collegiality or meeting clients where they are. In essence, I think there are far too few champions with a strong voice in the dietetic field who are willing to push vegan diets for reasons I've touched on earlier. I'm guilty of not doing enough and certainly hope that I will be able to do more in future. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very insightful. And I really like the part where you said about how, like, when we're being activists, to be more caring and taking in that positive approach rather than like getting attacked. Like, I feel like a lot of people feel that vegans are attacking their views, their personal views, whereas it's merely just a sharing of like knowledge that we know, right? So that's really nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
And more information for everyone, if you want, on Debbie Fong, I shared your website in the chat below.
Thank you.
Yeah, so next will be Samantha Shorkey. Samantha is a certified personal trainer and the first ever vegan World Naturals Bikini Pro. She's a keynote speaker on all things related to vegan bodybuilding and has been on several major media outlets like CBC Radio, CTV Morning, and on a variety of online publications, including PETA. She shares her knowledge and experience by way of her blogs and podcasts. I'll be posting a link during her talk in the chat if anyone wants to learn more. Her motto is, I don't preach, I inspire. And her biggest client success story was a meat eater turned vegan who won bodybuilding.com's 200K 12-week transformation challenge, beating out 345,000 contestants worldwide. Today, she'll be elaborating on her vegan journey and vegan diet while bodybuilding and building incredible muscle and performance benefits of turning vegan.
Thank you. So I am going to read here, and obviously I'm going to touch on the whole amino acids that Debbie spoke about briefly, but just bear in mind that I am a meathead, well, meatless meathead, and this talk is very much directed for vegan bodybuilders. So there are obviously tons of different vegan diets out there. This one is very specifically about building muscle. So as mentioned, I am a vegan trainer and nutrition coach living in Ottawa. but I've actually been doing online coaching for vegans all over the world for 7 years now. As mentioned, my big claim to vegan fame is being the first ever vegan World Naturals Bikini Pro, which I won that title in Texas in 2014. And I like to say the only thing I kill is the stage. Mm-hmm. I also have blog and podcast, which you can all find by searching Jacked on the Beanstalk, should you feel so inclined. And another synthetic feather, obviously, in my cap was in 2015, coaching the winner of bodybuilding.com's $200,000 transformation challenge. That was a woman who lived in Los Angeles and going from meat eater to vegan, ending up beating out 345,000 people worldwide. So clearly the whole misconception that vegans don't get enough protein or can't build as much muscle because our proteins are incomplete is total nonsense, as Debbie mentioned as well. So those are the arguments against veganism that I would like to discuss, because this is obviously my jam. My motto is I don't preach, I inspire. And it's basically my life's mission to break all of these stereotypes that exist in the meat heavy, testosterone fueled competitive bodybuilding world. And I actually hold many of the same beliefs that many non-vegan bodybuilding coaches do when it comes to building muscle and shredding body fat. I just like to integrate those same philosophies into a plant-based diet. So what does that mean? I eat 5 to 6 small meals per day. I include protein at every single meal. I try to keep my carbohydrates around my training, and I try to be mindful to keep the fats low as well. So I think what most meat-eating bodybuilders and coaches fail to realize is that plants have protein too. That means beans, whole grains, nuts, seeds, they all contain protein. Does meat contain more protein than plants? Well, it really depends on the foods we're comparing. For example, a cup of almonds actually has the same amount of protein as a cup of chicken, and a cup of lentils has the same amount of protein as a cup of pork sausage. The difference, however, lies in the number of calories and or the amount of fat, carbohydrates, and fiber that are present in each of these foods. There's even a little bit of protein in fruits and vegetables. For instance, did you know a cup of artichoke hearts contains 5 grams of protein, which is basically the same amount that you would find in an egg? I'm sure we can all agree that protein has forever been hailed as the king of all nutrients for building muscle, and for good reason. But the belief that we need to eat an abundance of dead animals in order to get enough protein is simply not true. For instance, when we're comparing meat with lentils, it's not really a fair comparison when you factor in the number of calories or the amount of fat or fiber present. Beef and chicken, for example, contain about 40 grams of protein per a 6-ounce serving, whereas lentils would only contain 15 grams of protein for a 6-ounce serving of them. But it's important to note that eggs, as well as chicken and beef, all contain a ton of cholesterol, saturated fat, and basically no fiber. Hello, heart disease and constipation. But beans, on the other hand, are jam-packed full of fiber, plus a little bit of carbs, and contain no cholesterol and very little fat. So what I'm essentially trying to say is that it's actually pretty easy for us vegans to get enough protein while supporting our gym beast goals. We just need to ensure that we're eating enough of the right foods in the right quantities, and of course, eating foods that contain all of the essential amino acids. Which brings me to argument against veganism number 1. It's hard to build muscle / get enough protein on a vegan diet. Now, I know Debbie touched on this already, but I love when someone asks me about my lack of protein, because I always come right back and say, oh, well, how much fiber are you getting in your diet? And this is especially true for many meat-eating bodybuilders, thanks to the rising popularity in keto and paleo diets, which promote a high fat, high protein intake and basically demonize whole grains. Yes, damn that evil fiber for filling us up, regulating our bowel movements, and reducing our risk of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And yet, sadly enough, virtually the entire US population is not consuming enough fiber based on my research. Yet new research continues to show that a vegan diet is better for our health and for the health of our planet, again, as Debbie demonstrated. Yet this idea that we need meat in order to get enough protein in our diet continues to persist. And many people are led to believe that plant protein is inferior to animal protein, or that we need to combine different foods at the same time in order to get a complete source of protein containing all of those essential amino acids. To these people, I say it is very easy to get enough protein as a vegan, as long as you are eating enough and mindful of what you're eating. So I am the first to admit I'm all for a high protein diet if you want to build muscle. And I strongly believe that it is necessary for building muscle. But despite the arguments that meatheads like to throw around, plants contain all of the protein needed to support your bodybuilding efforts. And you can get more than enough amino acids via beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. So in case you're wondering what essential means, that's basically that your body cannot make these amino acids itself, whereas non-essential means that they are produced inside your own body. So a complete protein then contains all 9 essential amino acids. And generally speaking, we consider foods that are high in amino acids to be a higher quality protein option. But plants are, of course, not missing or completely lacking in amino acids. They simply have more of one kind or less of another, unless we're talking about quinoa, soy, or chia seeds, because these nutritional powerhouses are actually considered complete proteins. So argument against veganism number 2, the whole soy debate. So this is one I hear all the time from meat eating gym bros. I heard that eating soy will decrease my testosterone and make me grow boobs. To them, I always say, well, if soy causes boobs to grow, I should be sporting double Ds by now, because I've literally been eating this complete protein source daily for over 20 years, and I'm still waiting for mine to appear. In all seriousness, though, soy gets a bad rap because it contains naturally occurring phytoestrogens, which are basically food compounds that possess hormone-like properties. And in fact, many foods contain them: flax seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, almonds, walnuts, carrots, and apples, to name just a few. In fact, flaxseed contains even more phytoestrogens than soy. Yet for some reason, we're all hating on soy and no one talks about flaxseed being the devil. So we need to put this soy hate to rest once and for all. I actually pulled up a study by the Department of Family, Consumer, and Nutrition Science in 2009, where they performed clinical studies to determine whether isoflavones, I think I'm saying that correctly, exert estrogen-like effects in men by lowering their bioavailable testosterone through the evaluation of the effects of soy protein. And their findings were that no significant effects of soy protein or isoflavone intake on testosterone were detected, regardless of the statistical model. So I also want to give my own little bro science spiel for a moment here. What people don't realize is that foods containing phytoestrogens are not at all the same as man-made synthetic exogenous estrogens that are found in the mini products that say we slather onto our skin every day, or the plastic containers that we store all of our prepped meals in. And I do encourage everyone to read The Toxin Solution by Dr. Joseph Pizzorno. It was a huge eye-opener for me in learning that it's these synthetic exogenous estrogens that are dangerous and can definitely mess with your hormones. However, natural phytoestrogens that are naturally found in foods do not play the same role in our bodies at all. And yes, there are some studies that suggest that soy increases the risk of breast cancer or Alzheimer's, or some people claim that it interferes with digestion and the absorption of certain minerals. The thing is, most of these studies involve a much higher quantity than most people eat in a day, even more so than vegan bodybuilders. What's important to note is that soybeans are an excellent source of fiber, B vitamins, calcium, and omega-3 fatty acids. It's also been proven to be great for bone health, lowering your LDL bad cholesterol, and increasing your HDL good cholesterol. And in terms of building muscle, as I already mentioned, soy is high in all of the essential amino acids, making it the perfect, complete vegan protein. And as I always tell my clients, just make sure to consume non-GMO organic varieties, fermented and whole organic soy, ones that are not genetically modified or heavily processed, are especially high in vitamins and nutrients, and they'll digest easier. So my personal faves are tempeh, edamame, and sprouted tofu, which should be easily accessible for you at your local grocery store. Circling back to the amino acids for a minute, I did want to mention that there are actually only 4 essential amino acids that are sometimes missing in plant foods, and they are lysine, tryptophan, methionine, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and phenylalanine. Probably butchering that one completely. Cut me some slack, guys. I'm a meathead. But anyway, the good news is that you can easily get enough of these amino acids simply by eating a variety of food, as I already mentioned. So for instance, lysine, seitan, vital wheat gluten is very high in lysine, quinoa, black beans, chickpeas, nutritional yeast, lentils, kidney beans, and of course, soy. Tryptophan, spinach, asparagus, nuts, peanuts, soy, sesame seeds, and pumpkin seeds. Methionine, avocado, sunflower seeds, Brazil nuts, and oats, and phenylalanine. Please tell me if I'm saying these correctly. Lima beans, nuts, peanuts, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, whole grains, soy, chickpeas, and lentils. So you can obviously see that these amino acids are abundant in a variety of plant foods. And to be honest, the 3 essential amino acids that we bodybuilders should be most concerned with aren't even on that list. They are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And it is this key trio that helps stimulate muscle growth the most. So valine specifically supports lean muscle mass building and repair. Leucine activates a pathway in your body that stimulates muscle protein synthesis, which is the process of actually making muscle. And isoleucine helps to reduce the harmful effects of stress on your body, because yes, bodybuilding is a form of stress on your body. So soybeans, lentils, pumpkin seeds are all really good sources of both leucine and valine, and you can easily get enough isoleucine through soy and seaweed, or do what most bodybuilders do, whether they're vegan or not, and simply include a good quality Bcaa supplement, which means branched chain amino acids, into your nutrition regimen. So we've established that I, like many bodybuilders, am a huge advocate for a diet that is relatively high in protein. And fun fact, did you know that if your body doesn't get enough protein to sustain itself, it will actually take it from your muscles? So for all you people who think that you'll just starve yourselves and look like a fitness model that way, without enough protein in your diet, you will lose your hard-earned muscles, not your body fat. So that means if you do not give your body enough protein, it will actually cannibalize its own tissue to get what it needs. So call me a gym bra, but I do make an effort to eat at least a little bit of protein at every single meal, and for good reason. Protein is what increases muscle tone. It gives that hard look that we meatless meatheads all strive for. Not to mention, it will help you feel fuller and crave less carbs and fat in the process. So how much protein should you be eating if you are going after those bodybuilding goals? The gold standard when it comes to protein intake, in my experience, is around 0.5 to 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. But if we're doing a cutting phase where we're trying to strip body fat whilst maintaining muscle, I will typically increase that to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and even more depending on the client's body type. Again, this is for strictly bodybuilding goals, not the average person who has no interest in building muscle. So my favorite protein sources are tofu, tempeh, protein powder, beans, lentils, and seitan, aka wheat meat, if you know what that is, vital wheat gluten flour. And let's briefly touch on the other important macronutrients while we're at it. Carbohydrates are our body's preferred source of energy, as opposed to fats and protein. and where most of us get our energy from, excluding the keto people. And fats are best used to help absorb vitamins, produce hormones, and protect our organs. So when it comes to carbs, meat is often hailed for being low in carbohydrates. Plant foods, on the other hand, are often demonized for being too high in carbs. But do not fear the carbs, my vegan friends. Yes, we can all agree that processed refined carbs like candy and chips aren't going to do you any favors, but good carbs like whole food, starchy complex carbs such as, quinoa and sweet potatoes and oats, they really do help to fuel your muscles and your metabolism. Complex carbs are also high in fiber and slow digesting, so they really do fuel a beast-like workout like nothing else. I usually suggest to my clients having 2 to 4 servings of complex carbs every day, and they're definitely best consumed before workouts to help give you a superhero-like energy, and post-workout to help replace lost glycogen stores from exercise, or I at least try to suggest having them earlier in the day so you can burn them off better. And by the way, gaining or losing weight happens just as fast on a diet that promotes carbs versus a diet that promotes fat and protein, because it all comes down to calories in versus calories out. So if you want to lose weight, you need to burn more calories than you're consuming. So my fave starchy complex carb sources: oats, white or brown rice. I like white rice post-workout because it's fast digesting. So your body will take it in a lot faster. Sweet potato is a great slow digesting carb, great for pre-workout. Potatoes, quinoa, squash, lots of good ones out there. As for fats, there are definitely many types of those as well. Saturated fats are the ones you want to avoid because your body doesn't need them. And guess what the biggest sources of this kind of fat are? Meat and dairy. Unsaturated fats, on the other hand, are the ones you do want to consume, especially those that are polyunsaturated. I'm sure you can already guess which foods provide the most polyunsaturated fats. Plants, of course, like walnuts, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, oil-rich nuts and seeds are also great fat sources. They're also one of the best sources of vitamin E, which is an antioxidant that strengthens your immune system and provides essential fatty acids. I typically will suggest to my clients to consume just 2 or 3 servings of fat daily, because they can actually help with weight loss, and not to mention decrease inflammation, keep your hunger at bay, and improve your mood and support your hormonal system. So my favorite sources are avocado, coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, cold pressed flax oil, raw walnuts, almonds, and I'm a sucker for all the nut butters and seed butters as well. What about the best vitamins and supplements for vegan bodybuilders? Well, I always tell my clients 2 things on this topic. First, that supplements aren't absolutely necessary, but they can assist a solid nutrition plan and training protocol. And secondly, there are 2 things in life you should never cheap out on: tattoos and vitamins. And I say this because sadly, there have been recent scandals relating to herbal supplements that were sold in big name places like Walmart and GNC that didn't even contain the actual ingredients listed on the label. Instead, they were substituting the medicinal herbs for things like garlic, beans, rice, and wild carrot. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the Food and Drug Administration doesn't even regulate supplements. And that has unfortunately led to sketchy manufacturers making fake products or so-called natural products that contain synthetic compounds. So don't cheap out on the vitamins and supplements. And you can always hit me up if you want to know my personal favorite recommended brands. But generally speaking, I do recommend a good quality multivitamin. Obviously, you should be getting a ton of vitamins and nutrients from the foods you're eating. But I like a good multivitamin to ensure you're getting a little of everything that your body needs to function as optimally as possible. And then be mindful that the capsule is not gelatin based. Gelatin is made from animal bones and connective tissues. So always look for it to say Bcaas. I really like the Progressive brand for active females or males, which is easily accessible at most grocery stores. L-glutamine is an important amino acid with many functions in the body. It helps with muscle recovery, so you won't be as sore after your workouts. It also aids your overall immune system and plays a role in your intestinal health. Vegan glutamine is usually sourced from beets or corn, and bonus if it's fermented because it will be extra beneficial for your digestion. I like creatine for aiding in muscle recovery and growth. It's also an amino acid that is found in your body's muscles, but also in your brain. And it can be made synthetically, which is the kind us vegans want. So always make sure you're buying a monohydrate kind of creatine, because otherwise it would probably be sourced from seafood and red meat. And that's how most people get creatine into their bodies. So keep that in mind when purchasing. And then BCAAs, huge advocate for BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, crucial for protecting your muscle during intense activity. And I find it gives you a little bit of energy. I really suggest taking these if you're looking to build muscle and keep the muscle you already have. They're even shown to assist with fat loss. And it's a good idea if you're starving all the time and trying to lose a bit of weight, because it will help curb your hunger. Most non-vegan BCAAs are made from animal or human hair, duck feathers, and or animal skin. Whereas vegan sourced ones are usually derived from beets, sunflower seeds, or corn. And when you are buying a BCAA supplement, do look for a formula that contains an optimal ratio of 2:1:1 for that leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And again, bonus points if it's fermented. Now, digestive enzymes I usually recommend as well, because a lot of people have difficulty digesting the increased fiber and protein when switching to a vegan bodybuilder diet. And if that happens to you, enzymes will be your best friend. I also encourage you to go read my most popular blog post of all time, which is the Vegan Bodybuilder's Guide to Farting and Bloating, for lots of tips on addressing this common yet unpleasant issue. Digestive enzymes basically will help your body to metabolize the fats and carbs and keep your digestion moving smoothly and quickly. And I also always suggest taking one of these before and maybe even after any big cheat meal you have, which, for the record, I do also always encourage my clients to have a weekly cheat meal, because it actually gives you some weight loss benefits for people who are following a restrictive or low carb diet. So that means scheduling a higher carbohydrate, higher calorie meal once every 7 days, not every day or every second day. And it's this kind of proper refeed, as we call it in the bodybuilding world, that will help boost a hormone called leptin, which is actually the king of all fat burning hormones. Because when we are dieting, leptin levels actually drop in our body's effort to spare body fat. But if you schedule a proper refeed once a week, they can actually boost your leptin levels and help burn fat at a more optimal rate. Back to the supplements, vitamin B12. I'm sure if you've been vegan long enough, you know that this one is crucial. Any vegan, you need to get some B12 in your diet, whether it's from a supplement or fortified foods. B12 is not present in plant food. It's actually produced. This is an interesting one. B12 is actually produced by intestinal bacteria. So meat eaters are able to get enough via the animal's intestinal bacteria that they're eating. So if you want to eat your own fecal matter, like some vegan animals do, you can get it that way, but it might be more appetizing to just supplement or get it through fortified foods like nutritional yeast or plant milks. But it is definitely important to get that B12 into you. Not only is it crucial for blood health and brain function, but it also boosts your energy during those heavy lifting sessions. And finally, a good quality protein powder. I'm a big advocate for supplementing with protein powders, because not only are they an easy way to hit your protein targets, but they're also a great way to satisfy sweet cravings. I like to bake with them, make smoothies with them. Plus, they're such a quick, portable, great option when you're traveling or just plain too busy to get a proper protein-rich meal in. And of course, as vegans, we do not consume the commonly found whey or casein-based powders because they are cow's milk derivatives. Instead, the most common plant-based protein powder sources you will find are pea, brown rice, and hemp. And I do like to think of myself as a vegan protein powder connoisseur. I even make my own protein powder. And I find that pea is the closest in taste and texture to whey. However, it's the hardest to digest. So if you're feeling farty and bloated when you're doing a pea protein, try opting for brown rice or hemp, or at least a combo of pea and rice. My own Jacked on the Beanstalk protein powder is rice-based, and hemp is great too, but it has kind of a gritty texture, a little too earthy, plus it's higher in fat, so it might not be the best option if you're hoping to lose body fat. And finally, I thought I would mention a little bit on bulking versus cutting for anyone who is trying to build muscle or lose body fat. Basically, in order to strictly lose body fat, you need to create a caloric deficit by either eating less or burning more, or a combination of both. And in order to strictly build muscle, most of us need a caloric surplus. So that means you're going to eat approximately 10% above what your maintenance calories are, all the while still lifting like a beast at the gym, of course. An easy formula for figuring out your maintenance calories would be to multiply your weight in pounds by 10 if you're a female and 11 if you're a male. So for instance, if you are a 150-pound woman, your maintenance, or the amount of calories your body needs at rest, would be 1,500 calories per day. And of course, every person is going to be different depending on your goals, lifestyle, etc. But it's a good ballpark figure to find out what your daily calories should be to maintain your current weight. And interestingly enough, most people actually struggle to put on muscle because they fail to consume an adequate calorie surplus. So I should mention, unless you're starting with a higher body fat percentage, then you could make muscle gains while you're in a caloric deficit. But it'll only work until your body fat percentage comes down to a certain level. So that's why many bodybuilders will follow a bulking period in the off season and then a cutting cycle when they're prepping for a show or wanting to look bikini ready for summer, etc. So for most people, bulking means adding an extra 300 to 500 calories to your daily maintenance calorie range, and being sure to lift hard and heavy during those workouts. Putting those extra calories to use for the purpose of fueling workouts. And then, yeah, tons of veggies, minimal processed foods, less than 30% of your calories coming from good fat sources. And yeah, just feeding your body plenty of starchy complex carbs. And then, of course, if you're wanting to lower body fat and lose a little bit of weight, you would do the opposite. You would cut 300 to 500 calories from your daily maintenance. And so it's basically 10% fewer calories than you normally would for maintaining your current weight. And for me, when I go into a cutting mode, that means cutting out sugar. I'm getting my sweet fix from stevia or protein powder, as sad as that sounds. And I'll replace higher calorie carbs with low cal options like cauliflower rice or zucchini noodles. And of course, one of my favorite fat swaps is I'll substitute regular peanut butter with the defatted powdered kind. So I think I'm almost at time here, so I'll wrap this up. But thank you everyone for listening, and whatever your vegan bodybuilding goals, stay committed, be consistent with your efforts, train hard and heavy, eat a well-balanced diet with plenty of plant protein-rich sources. And if you want someone to take the guesswork out of it, I know a really great coach here in Ottawa. Do hit me up on social media too. And subscribe to my podcast if you're a podcast listener, jackedonthebeanstalk.com. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was very informative and very entertaining. I also wanted to say that it was so great that you shared a positive light on carbs and fats in addition to protein. I feel like they definitely get a bad rep in today's media, but it's nice knowing that, you know, there's someone like you spreading valuable knowledge about those. So yeah, thank you so much. Next, we will be talking with Dr. Leila Dagin, who is a doctor turned plant-based nutritionist. She received her medical degree from the University of Vienna and completed her internship in the UK. Her personal experiences of overcoming health challenges through diet shifted her professional interests to focus on the power of nutrition. After transitioning to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle herself, she earned a plant-based nutrition certificate at eCornell, part of Cornell University, and obtained a Master's of Science degree in clinical and public health nutrition from the University College of London. She has also founded Plant-Powered Key Nutrition, whose link I'll post in the chat during her talk. And she is passionate about food justice and health equity. She aims to find effective ways to address racial and socioeconomic issues that affect health. Her project, Food and Diversity, seeks to introduce a plant-based diet to people of the global majority, a term coined to refer Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Today, she'll be talking more about the notion of veganism as a white thing.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Yes, as you heard, I was a doctor for a very long time before I had to give up. And it is quite sad because as doctors, we don't get any education in nutrition. So I didn't know anything about it. And I went actually vegan for animals. And I suffered from migraine, so that's actually why I had to quit, my medical career and just, stop being a doctor. And when I went vegan, I heard all these stories from people, oh, I went vegan and my migraine got better. And I was like, what? Why didn't I see any change in my migraine? And but then, when you're vegan, people keep asking you questions. And I'm quite actually happy that they do, because that forced me to learn more about nutrition. And then I learned about a whole food plant-based diet. And that kind of changed my life. My migraines got better. And when I regained my health, I felt like, now I have to share that with other people, not just with healthcare professionals, but also like kind of, with everybody else. So that's why I got into nutrition, and I'm really passionate about a plant-based nutrition. Although I understand that nutrition, it does play a huge role, but there are other factors that affect our health. And that is where the social justice issues come into place, like kind of racism has also an impact on our health. But today I'm just going to talk about a few arguments. At the moment I'm working as a freelance plant-based nutritionist. So people who come to me, they know I'm plant-based and they want to actually either go vegan or just be more plant-based. But I worked in the community for more than a year, and it was like an organization which wasn't vegan. So, the guidelines we had to, it was like kind of, animal-based. So we were, the guidelines were saying like kind of, 2 oily fish, portions of oily fish per week. But, I don't make a secret that I am vegan. So, and in fact, I always maybe even made a point of saying that actually I am vegan. I'm supposed to tell you to eat fish, but I don't believe that you need to eat fish. So I'm going to talk about the arguments that I heard in the community. And it is quite interesting because I found that, people would come to me and say, oh, yes, bring up one argument. And as soon as I would diffuse that argument, they would bring up another argument. And I realized it's just, an excuse, really, because they find it hard to change. Actually, food is so important in our lives. It is, it's more than just, to give us energy. We actually meet friends over food, and it does play a huge role, even from a cultural background, we share, the foods we grew up with. So I think, changing our diet is actually very difficult. But at the same time, I think, I'm sure you all have heard it, we should plant a seed, talk about it. And I think it is important that we do that, because, each time we actually talk about it and people hear about it, and, something changes. And then one day they hear it again and they may be actually ready to make that change. So I do think it is still important to talk about it, although it is difficult for people to change. Anyway, so my first argument, the one I want to actually talk about, is the soy consumption. And I'm glad that Samantha actually mentioned it, because the reason I chose that is because it is still a controversy among vegans. So, I do Kung Fu, and some of my martial artist kind of colleagues, who are spiritual, who are, into Buddhism, and they want to eat more plant-based, they kind of, come to me and say, yeah, but what about, soy milk and tofu? They are worried that they may get man boobs. And I find actually even vegans, when I talk to other vegans, they are concerned about soya. They are like, oh, but is it really healthy? I heard this and that. So I thought, I'm going to talk about that. Now, the misconception comes from the fact that soy contains isoflavones, which are antioxidants, and phytoestrogen. And as Samantha mentioned, phyto really means just plant, and phytoestrogen is different than the human estrogen. And there are two different types of estrogen receptors in the body, and luckily, the phytoestrogens are selective estrogen receptor modulators, which means that they have pro-estrogenic effects in some of the tissues, in our body, but at the same time, they have anti-estrogenic effects in other tissues. So that's why, we know from studies that, consuming soy reduces the risk of breast cancer in women, for example. It also reduces the risk of recurrence of breast cancer, and it reduces the risk of menopausal symptoms in women, but it improves bone density. And actually in men, soy consumption reduces the risk of prostate cancer, which is one of the most common cancers in men. And no, it does not cause man boobs. And, there was a study in 2010 which looked at soy consumption and testosterone levels in men. And the conclusion was that, it doesn't affect the testosterone levels at all. So soy is really, as Samantha mentioned, very healthy, and we should actually include it in our diet. Now, the next point I wanted to talk about is, many of you may have heard it, veganism is expensive. Now, it is difficult actually to pinpoint why non-vegans believe that a vegan diet is expensive. And when I was thinking about it, I think one of the reasons I have noticed is that people, the general public, they actually do believe that a vegan diet is healthy. And they believe that healthy foods are expensive. Ergo, a vegan diet is expensive. And I think the media and the food industry are actually to blame, because they teach us in their messaging, in their advertisements, that foods with special health properties are more expensive. So, vegan foods that are allegedly healthier are perceived as expensive. Now, to be fair, I think, maybe a few years ago, some vegan items, especially processed foods, were more expensive because we could only find them, in specialist stores and health shops. And even now, some of the more processed meat alternatives, and even sometimes vegan cheeses or vegan ice creams, are slightly more expensive. But I don't think they are that expensive that we could actually call the whole diet expensive. And, a lot of supermarkets, they offer their own brand options, which are, the same as the meat or dairy equivalent, or sometimes even cheaper. And if we think of the staple of a vegan diet, which are beans, rice, vegetables, and spices, nuts, all of that can be actually bought in bulk and very cheap. In fact, cheaper than meat. And I think the problem is that when people want to go plant-based, or go vegan or eat more plant-based, they really have no idea what to eat. And so they turn to the processed foods that mimic the taste of animal products. And I don't think that it is just because of the taste. It's also because they simply don't have any ideas what else they could eat. I had a client who told me that she usually just puts some meat into the oven, roast it, and add some vegetables, on the side. So now that she wanted to eat more plant-based, she didn't know what to do. What could she have instead? So that's why people turn to, those processed meat alternatives. Or another thing is they sometimes actually look up recipes or buy vegan cookbooks. And one of the mistakes you can do is follow a recipe and get all the ingredients. If you buy all the ingredients that a single recipe asks for, that can again be, it can turn up to be kind of expensive. So I think, and again, another thing is that, when you go to social media, all these vegan influencers and vegan celebrities, they post pictures of their elaborate meals, and, it looks so amazing. And yes, they have, expensive ingredients. So all of that adds up and makes people believe that, vegan food has to be so elaborate and so fancy and so expensive. So I think it is up to us actually to educate people, to provide them with easy recipes, with easy ingredients they are familiar with, and just offer them tips. Tell them to buy dried legumes instead of canned beans, or buy dried goods in bulk. And frozen fruits and vegetables are cheap, and they are just as nutritious as the fresh ones. So I think a vegan diet can be as expensive or as affordable as we want to make it. And it applies to any other lifestyle and diet, not just veganism. Now, the last argument, which is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm working on a project which actually focuses on that, is the fact that people believe veganism is a right thing. Now, we know veganism is not a right thing, but white veganism does exist. And I think that is where the whole problem lies. When you look at the mainstream vegan movement, it is all white. And the material that vegan activists hand out are actually designed for white people. So of course, people from different cultures, they feel that veganism is not for them. So I'm gonna break it down a little bit. If we look at not consuming animals or not harming animals, that has always been part of a lot of traditions and religions. We got Hinduism in India, Taoism in China, and of course Buddhism. So all of these religions actually advocate for a cruelty-free living. And I think that's also one of the reasons that we find so many accidentally vegan kind of options in the cuisines of those countries. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Jamaica and the Untitled lifestyle and diet, which is basically a vegan, a healthy vegan diet. And now I'm from Iran, so I'm from the Middle East. And when we look at the Middle East and we look at the culinary history of those countries, we see quite a lot of similarities to what the Greeks and Romans ate, which was basically lots of whole grains, lentils, beans, and vegetables. Yes, they did have a bit of meat, but it wasn't an everyday kind of meal. It was more on special occasions that they had meat. So basically, eating a plant-based diet, eating vegetables, not wanting to harm animals, these are not, an invention of the West. It has always existed. And I think it is again about educating people, but obviously doing it in a nice way, and showing them people from their own background who are following a lifestyle. And, like this panel, what I like about this panel is actually, if you look at the ethnic backgrounds, it is diverse. And we need that. We need actually to have diverse panels, diverse speakers, so that people from different backgrounds, they can actually see other people, so other vegans they can identify with, they can relate to, because that is what then they are more open to adopting the lifestyle. And sadly, a lot of the plant-based health summits, I don't know if you have joined any of them, there are usually like 35 to 40 speakers. I know because I have counted. And usually there's like kind of 5 to 7 speakers of vegans of color. The rest are white. So we need actually to have vegans of color represented on all those platforms. And it's again on us, like people like myself who are vegans of color, that we go out there and post about it, so that we are present, so that people can see us. And another thing is just reminding those people that some of the staples in their traditional diet are already plant-based. So again, I think it's really about educating people, but we need to do it in a nice way. That's why what I liked about what Samantha was saying, that we shouldn't preach. We need to actually just inspire people with the way we live, and what we post on social media is important. And I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we kind of promoting and perpetuating with our posts? And we just need to be more aware of it. Posting meal pictures, I think that's a very actually a good way of activism, because food is important. People don't know what to eat, but we should also post those simple meals, not always those fancy looking meals. And if you're a vegan of color, just make sure that you post about that, so that people find other people looking like them. And I think, there are changes are happening, and I'm quite hopeful that, we can actually make some, change that and reach more people. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great talk. I know. I totally agree with the whole, it's kind of like recently we've taken an initiative to promote more cultural vegan foods. And I know like our group did a recent blog post with one of our exec, I think she's here, Gabriella, but I think she talked about her like cultural experience as a vegan and, how we can incorporate what foods are already vegan and also different cultural foods and turn them vegan. And yeah, it's a great thing. Yeah. Thank you. So last but certainly not least, we have Liz Marshall. So Liz is a multi-award winning Canadian filmmaker, and since the 1990s, she's been writing, producing, directing, and filming diverse international and socially conscious programs and documentaries with multiple teams. Her work has been released in a variety of platforms, such as theaters, global broadcasts, digitally, and screened at top-tier global film festivals. Her most recent work is a documentary you may know, Meat the Future. It chronicles the birth of the cell-based meat industry in America through the eyes of CEO pioneer Dr. Uma Valetti and his startup company, Memphis Meats. Her work has been widely reviewed, interviewed, and or featured from Women in Hollywood, Variety Magazine, CBC, Elle Canada, BBC World News, and more. So today she'll be talking to us about the topic of veganism is extreme. So without further ado, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, so I want to talk about veganism from the point of vegan consciousness, which is, I should start with my own story. And as a filmmaker, as an animal rights vegan filmmaker, as an environmentalist, as a social justice documentary filmmaker, I'll just say that I've done a lot of extensive travel in the world, and I've had the privilege to, film stories of human resilience all over the globe. And I like to sort of sometimes sit back and just reflect on the wider, bigger issues that we're facing. And, when I started making The Ghosts in Our Machine, for example, some of you may have seen it. That was my animal rights documentary that was released in 2013. I realized that I really wanted to make a film that could bridge the gap within the social justice world at large. Because my experience was that veganism and animal rights was just this very stigmatized, almost marginalized social movement at the time. I think it's grown and it continues to grow in size and scope, and it's become mainstream since then. But there's certainly a long way to go. But I really wanted to make a film that could potentially bridge the gap and reach people that care about hunger and war and racism and misogyny and world peace and things like that. Because I believe that all these issues belong together. And that's why I'm a vegan, is because I really connect with the intersectional inherent nature of what it means to be an activist every single day when I eat my food, when I shop for my food. And it goes beyond that. As I said, vegan consciousness is not just what we eat. It's how we view the world. It's how we view other species. It's how we relate to all consumer products. So not just the food that we eat. So I think that stepping back and looking at the wider issues and where we are right now in the world, we're in the midst of a global pandemic. We are living in a climate emergency. We need solutions, and we need them fast. So while veganism is one solution, my current documentary, Meet the Future, focuses on another solution, and that is the innovation of real meat that is derived from animal cells. Now, why would a vegan make a film about meat? Because while I am an idealist and an activist, I'm also a pragmatist, very much so, in the sense that, I've traveled the world, and from a cultural standpoint and from a global perspective, veganism is not something that, well, let's just put it this way, 90% of the world eats animal products. And it's expected that meat consumption will double by 2050 as, certain economies in the world are rising and population growth. Meat is still seen as a status symbol, as something that we need to consume to be healthy. And while it's true that the vegan plant-based consciousness and movement is growing, it is still roughly, well, a very small percentage. So I like to keep these statistics always in mind when I'm doing my work, because I want my work to be effective in reaching as many people as possible. So Meet the Future is actually for meat eaters. That's, who the film is for. And in fact, The Ghost in Our Machine, which is a documentary that follows animal rights photographer Joanne MacArthur as she does her work over the course of a year in parts of North America and in Europe. That film had a very, very, very powerfully passionate, strong vegan core base. But the legacy of The Ghost in Our Machine is that we were able to expand that base and reach beyond that base. And in fact, if you'd like to view the metrics, the impact metrics of The Ghost in Our Machine, you can download our impact report from theghostinourmachine.com website. And it's the metrics are based on a global impact evaluation that we engaged in to understand how the film was actually affecting and influencing people's behavior and people's consciousness. So it was a really fascinating exercise to engage in after the film had been out in the world for 18 months and, was being seen all over the world. We really needed to understand the effectiveness of the film. And so please take a look at that if you can. And look at the qualitative and quantitative metrics of how a documentary can actually move in the world and actually can affect change in the world. And that's why I do what I do, because it's proven over and over again with documentaries. Last night I watched Seaspiracy on Netflix. I encourage everyone to watch it. We've been waiting for this film for a long time, and it's very hard-hitting, and it's very, very important, and it's urgent that documentaries are reaching people. So to the question of, veganism is extreme. I think to a lot of people it is. And so in terms of my approach, I like to try to reach those people. And I like to try to reach them by not being judgmental. I like to try to establish a tone in my language and in my filmmaking that can be accessible to people that don't understand veganism at all, or who want to care and do care about animals, do care about the environment, but struggle with how extreme it seems or is to them in their mindset. Back to what I said when I started talking, which is vegan consciousness. A vegan consciousness is more than just a health-based decision to eat plant-based food. It extends beyond that. And so for me personally, I went through a number of steps to reach a vegan consciousness. I know for some people it's an immediate baby step and suddenly they're there. They just have it. They have their vegan consciousness. But that wasn't the case for me. So I think I've been a really good portal to make the films because I can relate to the skepticism. I can relate to, the fact that I've traveled in so many different countries around the world where a vegan or plant-based diet is seen as a poor person's meal, or it's seen as inadequate in terms of its protein. I don't view that. I'm a happy vegan. I'm healthy and I have vegan consciousness. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I know I'm a minority and I don't want to, and I try not to be dogmatic or pushy. Rather, I try to reach people. So with Meet the Future, I'll tell you as I wrap up that cell-based meat or cultivated meat or clean meat, these are the different nomenclature. It hasn't landed in terms of what it's actually called yet. You may or may not have heard of this pioneering innovation that is now regulated in Singapore. So there's restaurants now in Singapore that are serving cell-based chicken, or otherwise referred to as cultured chicken. And it's real chicken, but it came from an animal cell. So it's cell culture. So it's using science, food technology to eventually get to a place where slaughter of 70 to 100 billion land animals a year is not necessary. And that's where things are headed on the innovation side. There's plant-based innovation, plant-based meat innovation, and there's cell-based meat innovation. I tried it twice while I was making the film between 2016 and 2019. Does that mean that I'm no longer a vegan? That's an interesting philosophical question. I had no moral dilemma, conflict within myself to try the cell-based chicken that my camera crew and I tried while we were making the film. So it poses a question around, when cell-based food, cell-based fish, cell-based meat, seafood are available for consumers, which is coming very soon, by the way. It poses the question, even though technically it's not vegan, because it's derived 100% at the cellular level, it's identical to animal protein. It is animal protein. Does that mean that vegans who want to eat it, are they no longer vegan? That's a question. So I know I'm going all over the place, but just to bring it back to social justice and an intersectional vegan consciousness, it is my life's work and mission to try to achieve aha in an audience, so that an audience person who loves their dog and loves their cat and loves wildlife can walk away and do some very deep introspection and reflection around the sentience and value and wondrous qualities of all animals and our need to protect them, and to extend that outwards to biodiversity and the dramatic effects of climate change, deforestation, and all of that. So to me, it's all connected, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that people that are fighting for social justice and want to end war and conflict and violence need to look at their own plates, because it's a microcosm. And that is the basis by which I like to extend my discussions with people outwards. So I'll end it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really love the I've got to say I love your your pragmatic outlook, and in acknowledging that, you know, as much as us vegans would love for the whole world to turn vegan, it's a very hard, tough goal, and it's not feasible for a lot of people that live in parts of the area with food deserts where they just don't have access to great fresh whole foods. So recognizing that privilege we have is really important. Thank you for that. Yeah, so now we can move into the question period. If anyone has any questions in underneath in Zoom, you can have a reaction where you can raise your hand or something. We already have one question in the chat, and I believe that's for Liz. It's, does cell-based meat have the same problems with cholesterol and saturated fats?
My understanding, and I'm not an expert, you know, on the food innovation or technology, but my understanding is that they can, and they do, tweak the nutritional profile so that it's healthier. In fact, the main subject of Meet the Future, my documentary, is CEO Dr. Uma Valeti, who was born and raised in India, and he became a very successful cardiologist in the US before taking a very passion-driven, risky career turn in 2015 and starting up his company, Memphis Meats. So he is a cardiologist. He's a doctor who cares about human health. So I believe that that is definitely a focus of all these different startups around the globe that are innovating meat from animal cells to make it healthier for meat eaters.
I think Shannon, you had a question?
Yeah, so I have a question for Samantha. So I'm pretty into fitness too, not necessarily bodybuilding, but so I know you talked a bit about protein powder. I've never tried protein powder, but a lot of my friends do use it. Would you say that it's the same effectiveness as just protein in normal plant foods?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're following macros and your goal is to get, 75 grams to 100 grams of protein per day, doing protein shakes is definitely a great way to get that protein target up. And a lot of the plant-based ones are obviously much better for you. Now you can also get ones that are full of artificial sweeteners and all kinds of awful ingredients as well, but there are a lot of clean ones out there as well. And like I said, if you stick to, a rice pea combo, you're going to hit that amino acid profile really nicely. And yeah, there are a lot of good ones out there for sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
There's another question for Liz from Shimmy. Does cell-based meat cause any harm to animals?
Hi, Shimmy. So I would say, I'm going to say no, aside from a prick in the skin to take a biopsy, or, you know, which, yeah, that hurts a little bit. But when you compare that to slaughter and the implications of conventional animal agriculture, and the amount of suffering and the use of animals in that entire cumbersome system of raising, you know, breeding, raising, confining, all the way to slaughter. What these scientists and food technologists are actually having breakthroughs around is the whole notion of the perpetual cell. So, for example, in a very concrete way, when we were filming at Memphis Meats over 3 years, all the research and innovation that they were doing in their labs was from one biopsy, and it produced a lot of chicken. So it's not like they need a new biopsy every time that they create the chicken meat. And by the way, I'll just add that, you know, the media likes to refer to this as lab-grown meat. I just want to make that clarification, which is that once it's actually available at scale and being produced in a food factory, it's no longer lab-grown. Lab-grown is the term, I guess, that they use because they're in research and development. That's the phase that this industry is at, except for Singapore, which is producing it now at scale for consumption.
Great, thank you so much. There's a question for Debbie. Have you noticed any positive impacts in your practice after the revised Canada's Food Guide that now recognizes plant-based protein and promotes more plant consumption?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I was very happy that the Canada's Food Guide, the newest version came out. It legitimizes the way we talk about plant protein. It pushes plant source protein to the forefront in good comparison with animal source protein. So I was very happy about that. And from the counseling perspective, I find that clients have become even more receptive when plant proteins are presented using the Canada's Food Guide as a supportive tool. So it was definitely a plus. So I hope that answers the question. I also like to add my 2 cents about protein powder. I generally don't recommend protein powder unless, as Samantha mentioned, if one wants to build lots of muscles, then there may be a role for protein powder to play in the overall eating pattern. When we have protein powder is actually a processed item because we have to extract protein from plant sources to make plant-based protein powder. But in the process of making protein powder, a lot of nutrients get discarded. So if we, for the average vegan, we can actually go to plant-based plant foods to get more than enough protein. The key sources, as other speakers already talked about, it's legumes, tofu, various kinds of beans, even whole grains have lots of protein as well, like quinoa. 1 cup of quinoa is 8 grams of protein. And vegans, in many cases, eat more protein than the body actually needs. And in any case, so that's my 2 cents. And unless there is a strong reason to go to protein powder for protein sources, I really think we should first look to whole foods to get our protein rather than strictly go to protein powder. And by the way, for university students, just 2 tablespoons of peanut butter will get you 8 grams of protein already. If you have a peanut butter sandwich with whole grain bread, 2 slices whole wheat bread, it's 8 grams of protein plus 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 16 grams of protein in just that small sandwich. So it's very easy to get enough protein. Maybe Layla, Dr. Dehghan can throw in your 2 cents as well. I know you actually produced a short video about protein as well.
Yes, I actually agree with Debbie, and I know one of the projects I was working recently was talking to vegan athletes of color, and it is interesting. A lot of them actually don't use protein powders, and I'm talking about bodybuilders. And one of the videos was Bill Tucker, and Debbie spoke on that video as well. And he actually, when he went pro bodybuilder, I mean, he's retired now. I think his first kind of tournament. He was on protein powders, but then later he ditched it and he was just doing it on whole food plant-based. So it is possible to get all the essential amino acids you need on a whole food plant-based diet without protein powders. I mean, the athletes I have spoken to, they always say it is just easier, kind of when they are lazy. So it's like kind of, just to get that big, if you really want to get a certain target, you have a number to reach, it just makes it easier, but it is possible. And especially I have to say, Shadin, because you said you don't really do it professionally. People who work out just up to 6 to 8 hours per week, they don't need to actually have more protein than the average person. I think that is something we forget. We work out an hour a day and we think, okay, we need to have protein powders. That's what people do. But that's added calories as well. So especially if you're trying to lose weight and you have protein powders, you are actually adding to your calories. So if you're just working out, even if you're, as I said, up after 8 hours, then you need to increase your protein intake, but not necessarily with protein powders.
Great, thank you. There's also another question for Debbie. It's in the chat. I've recently heard an RD speak about diabetes fitness group who did not seem to know about the new Canada's food guide. She was speaking from a grocery chain, perhaps some lobbying still in effect from dairy and meat boards.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. As a matter of fact, I am not surprised at all. I worked briefly at a supermarket. That supermarket chain does have dietitians on site. The beef industry, if not every year, now last year probably it didn't, I'm sure it didn't happen last year, but it happened several years in a row that they actually sponsored a tour, a paid, I shouldn't say paid, they invited dietitians and dietetic students to go on farm tour and take them to a dairy, to a beef farm or dairy farm, and then to visit some vegetable processing plant as well. And lunchtime, they serve steak, of course. But in any case, this just shows the influence of the beef industry or other animal-based lobbying groups, the influence of these organizations on the food industry. And I'm not surprised that dietitians out there being not aware of the healing power of whole food plant-based eating, especially for chronic illnesses, including diabetes. But I'm surprised that they are not aware of the new food guide. But even though I say I'm surprised that they are not aware of the new food guide. Remember, not too long ago, a dietitian that I worked briefly with was not aware of the precision of Dietitians of Canada and the precision of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics in the US being supportive of vegetarian diets, including vegan diets. I had to show the document or the research paper to that dietitian to get her to realize that that document did exist. And it was the Dietitians of Canada's position, as well as the AND's position, to acknowledge the health benefits of vegetarian diets. But it's a very sad thing to hear, especially in today's in 2021. Thanks for the question.
For Liz, when do you think cell-based meat will be available to mass consumers?
Hopefully as soon as possible, because it's going to, I think, quell a lot of the emergency that is happening for animals and for the environment. But I guess pragmatically, I don't know. There is an organization in Canada called Cellular Agriculture Canada. Cellular Agriculture Canada. And if you go to their website, they just released the first white paper on the regulatory path forward in Canada. So Canada is behind the US. The US is much further ahead in this because they, you know, Silicon Valley is, you know, the hub, like the holy grail, I guess, for cutting edge innovation in the world. So it's further ahead in the US, and actually Meet the Future is really about the birth of the industry. So I hope everyone can watch it. It's on CBC Gem, so you can watch it for free on CBC Gem. Anyways, to answer your question, the regulatory bodies in the US, so the USDA and the FDA, are working together to establish clarity about a pathway. And I guess all the companies in the US that are working on this are just being as patient as possible, but obviously you have to get it right. So probably within the next 2 years, it's going to be available for consumers. And then it's popped up all over the globe. So in Israel, it's also really taking off there as well.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
The next question is for Layla. As a follow-up on white veganism, what are some ways vegan students can discuss this with their families who might come from cultural backgrounds where meat is a staple?
Well, we were actually talking about, you know, how to talk to your family members about veganism before the panel discussion started. Family members are always the hardest to talk to. It doesn't matter from which cultural background they are from. But I would take the same approach I take to anybody else from, you know, a different cultural background. And it really depends on which culture they are from. Because if you look at the culture, I mean, I'm from the Middle East, and I really thought, no, meat is really such a staple, you know, it is in every single dish, there is meat. But when I actually looked at the history, I realized it is not, it was never. So I think depending on which culture, you know, the family members are from, you know, if you look at the history, we have the Jamaican and the Ital diet, and, you know, in Africa, Ethiopian diet actually food is very plant-based. Actually, once a week, I think it's on Fridays, they are supposed to eat plant-based anyway. So, and again, depending on, you know, if you're from India, China, Japan, all those countries, you know, if you look at the history, you see that it was predominantly plant-based. Meat used to be actually a luxury item, just reserved for like kind of, you know, kings and, you know, all those wealthy people. And I think what is happening now as the people in the Middle East and in Asia and even in South America, actually the meat consumption is increasing because they are getting wealthier and they see it as a sign of showing off their wealth. So, and that's why, you know, food chain restaurants like McDonald's, Pizza Hut actually doing so good, you know, so in countries like Bangladesh and India, they have so many branches because it is seen as a sign of being cultured, being sophisticated. So being westernized, actually eating a Western diet is seen as a sign of wealth and yes, being cultured even. And I think, you know, we just need to show them people who are already following a vegan diet. I mean, I think Black Americans are doing quite a good job at the moment. There are so many, you know, events happening with Black vegans. And we need to do the same with other cultures. I mean, the project I'm working on at the moment, I interviewed, you know, everybody in the video is some vegan of color, healthcare professionals and athletes. And what I did is in between the interviews, I have people from around the globe, you know, China, Hong Kong, India, and Iran. They come on, and Marrakesh, you know, Morocco, and they come and they say, I am actually vegan and I live in this country, just to show that, you know, you can be vegan and, you know, be in a different country. You don't need to be in the West. You can have a different ethnic background. So it is really just showing them, you know, the examples, but it takes time. It is going to take some time to change that perception. Yeah.
That's fair. Family members are definitely the hardest to get.
Yes, they are.
There's one for Liz. What project do you have in mind for the next one?
I'm writing my first fiction script, and it's about the climate emergency. It takes place 5 years from now, and actually, one of the main characters, her name is Shimmy. Shimmy knows that. And Shimmy was actually, and will be more of a consultant. Anyways, the Gen Z activists in it are vegan and pushing for a vegan world. And yeah, so it takes all the themes and everything that I care about, but it's now in a fiction form of a story that is placed in the future.
That sounds really exciting. I think it's great that, there's like a fiction element to it, because even though what you're talking about, the topics are not fiction at all, like it's very relevant. It'll get a wider engagement and hopefully to all the youth as well. So that's exciting.
I have a question for you guys, because I'm also in development about sustainable fashion and the garment industry, which is also a very unsustainable, very inhumane, crazy industry in the world. Do you think that is something that vegans, vegetarians, environmentalists will want to watch?
Yes.
Everyone's nodding, yeah?
Yes,
Okay,
especially
cool.
with like the downfalls of like fast fashion. So many companies are going through that, and like there's a recent movement, especially on campus. I remember last year there was like a whole club that did things like reusing clothes, so getting like not selling, but trading clothes and things like that, and that was really popular. So I definitely think that'll be engaging. Yeah.
It would be really great to have like your smart youth people like you as a sort of sounding boards. I'll be in touch with Shimmy about it. She's my go-to.
Yes, she's great. Okay. I think Shadon, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I had it up before. Somebody kind of asked my question. I was just gonna ask Dr. Layla about, I'm Middle Eastern myself, Palestinian, and I've had a little bit of difficulty like getting to my family about veganism, awkward family get-togethers and stuff like that. So I was just gonna ask about advice that you had, but I think you pretty much touched on that. So I'm good.
Can I just add something to it? What I do with the Iranian dishes, I always look at it and tell them, look, there is already a protein source. You don't need to add meat to it. And I know the Arabic food is similar, like kind of all the flavor comes actually from the spices and herbs they are using. It is not the meat. And again, actually, if you look at the history, I was quite surprised when I found actually there was a first culinary cookbook, which was actually written by an Arab. I don't have his name, but ages ago. So, and that was plant-based. So I think, it is just education, but family members are the hardest. So don't try to convince them to understand it, just as long as they understand that you want to do that. So I think that would be good.
Yeah, I think it's also just more of like, I would rather them just like respect it, which they do now. They accept it, and that's great. And my mom, she loves trying to cook Arabic foods and like make them vegan. And so she loves doing that for me, but yeah, so it's gotten better.
There are some Arab bloggers. Do you know them? There are
No.
actually a few who are vegan bloggers. I'll send you the link. So there are some people out there who are veganizing Arab foods. And I think again, that is another way of actually reaching to your family. See, that is your favorite food, and there's a vegan version. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll send you the links.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think they have a general question on what is the wisdom on juicing and like nutritional insights on juicing.
That was my question. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I bought an awesome juicer, and because there's so many vegan like nutritional like experts here, and Samantha is a fitness guru. Is your, I don't know, what do you think about juicing, and is it really an amazing thing to do, or what?
I can go first and then Debbie and Samantha can add. I don't usually recommend juicing because you get rid of the fiber. And when we talk about sugar, added sugar that we should avoid, actually when you juice, the sugar in the food, in the whole food, is intracellular, so that's fine. But when you juice, it is considered extracellular. It's considered free sugar. So then it would be just sugar. So it is like added sugar, and we should avoid it. Now I know some people do juicing as a way of actually increasing their micronutrients. But those people who do that, I am not an expert, but I know they drink lots, not like a glass. They drink like liters of juice per day to get that level of micronutrients. I prefer smoothies, to be honest, because the fiber is still in and you get all the micronutrients. That's my 2 cents. So Debbie and Samantha, I don't know what they want to say.
Okay.
Yeah,
Samantha,
I was going to say the same thing. You're missing out on the fiber, although I don't think it's a bad thing to do because you're still getting absolutely some good nutrition in there. But for people who are concerned that veganism is an expensive diet, I find that you can definitely use up a lot of fruits and vegetables with juicing. I love my juicer for when my fruits and vegetables start to go bad. So I think it's an awesome thing for that. But then the cleanup, I find it's such a pain to clean the juicer. So I personally would rather opt for a smoothie as well. But if you enjoy a fresh green juice, and I have many clients who love to start their day with that, and it's great for alkalizing your body and great detoxification, I would say go for it for sure. But it does get expensive, and ain't nobody got time to clean a juicer every day.
Let me add my 2 cents. I agree with everything that Layla and Samantha mentioned. It depends on one's goal. If the goal is to for weight gain, for example, when I worked at a cancer unit at the hospital, some patients just could not eat much or couldn't swallow. So juicing would help them in that situation. But think about eating an orange or getting a glass of orange juice, both of the same calories. It would take you much less time to down a glass of juice than peeling an orange and eating it. So if the goal is to manage weight, then eating a whole fruit, it's much better than getting the juice out of a fruit, discarding various kinds of nutrients. About choosing vegetables, my little concern is that it depends on what type of vegetables one uses. If we use high oxalate greens to make the juice, then you're creating or raising the risk of having oxalate calcium kidney stones if you use that kind of juice or green juice often. So choose your greens carefully if you want to make juice from vegetables, because it becomes a very high concentration of certain nutrients in a small volume.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so I think we're gonna round up. I hope the meeting doesn't close off on us, because I said till 2:00, but I don't know. I don't think it will. But before we go, I wanted to also share a website called plantbaseddata.org, and it's in the chat. They kind of share a lot of research articles. So I know it's often times it's hard to find which research articles can be trustworthy and things like that, especially in health and nutrition. So they have a site that focuses on articles for health, but also environment articles around plant-based diets and things like that. So check them out. Yes, thank you to all the panelists for talking and sharing us your very valuable knowledge. You all shared a very entertaining yet still enlightening speech, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you again. Also, lastly, remember, if you fill out the Google form from today's panel, you'll be entered to win a gift card. So there's that. But if anyone has no further questions, I think
Thank you so much for organizing this event and for every panel. It was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Thank
guys
you.
are really
Have a good
beacon of
weekend.
light on this planet. Really admire you guys. Saintly person, noble person. Thank you so much.
Thank
Love you
you.
guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.